Hello, everyone. Welcome to North and South Podcasts. This is Tim speaking. I have been really ill for about 12 days and I haven't done any podcasting. I haven't done any editing. So I thought I'd make an effort because it's the 23rd of December today, as I record this, to do a Christmas special and then maybe have a week or two off while I record a few and edit a few because I'm a little bit behind the eight ball, as it were. Just want to say thanks to everyone who's been supporting me with North and South podcasts. As you know, I've got a few themes, and if you ever want to come on to contribute, if you know someone who you think would be good to get involved, to come on to get lived experience or an important story out there, please let me know. You make this thing happen. Been doing some work with Hope Street, which is a wellbeing charity community interest company in Ormskirk, West Lancashire, not far from Liverpool. It's been good working with them and doing a few podcasts recently with people from Hope Street. But I just want to talk today about health and gratitude because I haven't been at all well for about 12 days, as I've just said. And it just makes you appreciate when you're well and you take it for granted. And I just wanted to talk about that today, how we often take things for granted, etc. Before I do that, I did a podcast with Steve about being sectioned and the importance of medication in managing various mental health conditions and how he's got through all these challenges and made a life full of meaning for himself by helping out with Hope Street and doing other things. And I released that a little bit late last Saturday and there was a little bit less traffic. So I would urge everyone who's listening to listen to that podcast and listen to what Steve's been through about being sectioned, etc. It's very, very interesting and enlightening. And for someone like myself who can't imagine what that must be like to be sectioned, I think it's a very important story and a very important lived experience that people need to know about. Because that is there and many people go through it who are having a difficult time. So thanks very much to Steve for opening up with that podcast and telling us all about his experiences. Now, as you know, I've got a few health issues in terms of I've got a rare genetic illness. I've also got issues with well-being, etc. And I've spoken about possible neurodiversity as well in the past. When I was young, I thought I was a hypochondriac because I was always sick. And I remember going to the doctors once and saying, "Doctor, I've got like three things wrong with me." And the doctor looked at me as if I was a hypochondriac and basically was quite dismissive. Anyway, as it turned out, I had this chronic illness and they were just some of the symptoms of that chronic illness. And I thought like I was always sick and there was something wrong with me. And then I learned that actually that was just the way the condition was. And I just didn't know that then. And I was getting gaslighted by a few people in my life, including GPs who I often came up to help me. And while being very grateful for the NHS in the United Kingdom, certainly when you've got rare conditions, chronic illnesses, sometimes it can be quite hard to get through the door and get believed. But anyway, people can be very judgmental about people who are ill, and I still know some people who think that all illness is just conceived in the mind. I still know people who talk like that, and I still know people who, when people are going through a tough time, they kind of think, "Oh yeah, they're milking it and they're making it up." Now, there is an extent to which you can identify a condition and not do yourself any favours. I think that's important to acknowledge that. But these people, some of whom have not had particularly big health issues in their lives, you need to get a grip on reality and acknowledge that illness is actually a real thing in the world. Okay, it's not just everyone laying it on thick. And I think people need to educate themselves and speak to people and let go of this ridiculous ideology that some people have that a lot of illness is just completely fake. It's like this kind of Donald Trump thing, like, oh, I won't catch COVID, I'm a proper man kind of mentality about things. It's almost like a traditional working class thing as well, where I'm from, that you don't acknowledge that you're sick or, any of that carry on. Absolutely ridiculous. I also sometimes get spoken to, like, oh, going on about how by people who smoke and drink and don't live very healthy lives. And in many ways, I look at them and go, well, that's great. If you're getting on with that and feeling good with yourself for doing all that, that's great. But I need to be careful what I do to my body because of how my body responds. I haven't drank now since I was 29. I'm 45 now, and that's been a big part of me stabilising my health and making me feel better day to day. So, again, each to their own, but don't dismiss people who are trying to improve their health, and don't dismiss people who've got genuine health issues that make life difficult. One of the biggest predictors of well-being, taking a hit, is having a chronic illness. So look out for people and don't be so judgmental. Jesus Christ healed the sick. As we know, Buddha went out into the world and saw illness and said we need to be reconciled with illness, and we need to acknowledge that there is suffering, etc. in the world, which is something I've spoken about before. On the 15th of December, I had a terrible fever in relation to this virus that I've got, and I was struggling to breathe. And I probably had a little bit of an anxiety attack, thinking I couldn't breathe, and made it worse. And phoned ambulance people out who came to the house. This was on the first day of the nursing strike. And my fever was so bad that it seemed to make me anxious about the fact that whether I could breathe or not. But anyway, they calmed me down and said that my breathing was okay, my oxygen levels were okay. And spoke to a doctor about the high fever, said the fever's very high, you need to get control of it. But it just got me thinking, I haven't been ill for a while. I had COVID a couple of times, and I had a bit of long COVID and a rash, which wasn't very nice, but I haven't been really, really ill for quite a few years, and it's quite a shock when you're really ill. In terms of your mind, you're wondering if there's something wrong with you. When I couldn't breathe properly, I was thinking, oh my God, am I going to be here tomorrow, that kind of thing. And I've known a lot of elderly people who don't want to go into hospital, and people with disabilities who don't want to go into hospital because they feel like if they go in, they might not come out. And one of the things I've learned from hospital through the years is how important it is to be able to look after yourself in a hospital, because if you can get up and go to the toilet and feed yourself and you don't feel too bad, hospital can be quite a pleasant experience. But if you're relying on other people to help you go to the toilet, to look after you, to monitor you when you're really, really, really ill, it's actually a very difficult place to be, hospital, because they're under-resourced and they haven't got the staff and the resources to look after people properly. And that can be very, very difficult. Someone I know recently went into hospital and was told to soil themselves because they never had the staff to help them go to the toilet. This was someone who struggled with their mobility, and they had such a terrible time being left in their mess for huge, huge amounts of time and being considered a nuisance by overstretched staff. They were quite adamant that it wasn't the staff who were the problem, it was the lack of resources. This is in October time, September, October time in the United Kingdom, that they said they would not go back to hospital again, regardless. What a sad, sad indictment of the society that we live in, that we have people who speak like that about the NHS, which is supposed to be free at the point of access, regardless of your need. Now, there's often a bit of a false dichotomy with health services in terms of the fact that people say, oh, do you want it privatised like the United States, or do you want an NHS like we have in the UK? And it's a little bit of a false argument, because I wouldn't want anything like what happens in the United States, where you pay, where different companies can drop you. The amount that they have to pay for basic medication is disgusting. The whole political system and the vested interest is bought up by the private wealth of those pharmaceutical companies and healthcare providers in the United States. It's an absolute disgraceful system that no one in the world would ever want to emulate, apart from elitists in countries like the United Kingdom. The US-style health system is quite rightly condemned. They spend twice as much as we do on healthcare, and their outcomes are absolutely appalling. The inequality, the cost of medication, and as I've said a moment ago, the influence of the private healthcare companies on the political system is absolutely disgusting. Now, that isn't to say that our NHS is perfect. It needs reform. There are other models around the world of social insurance. If you look around Scandinavia, France, Germany, there's much better examples and better ways to run health services. But we have had the whole thing cut to the bone since about 2010 with the austerity agenda. The way the Conservative Party has treated the NHS has been absolutely appalling. And the system in this country, again, is a bit of a false split. You either vote for one party and all its ideas or another party and all its ideas. Particularly if you live in England, the Labour Party and the Conservative Party. Again, I'm not a particular advocate for either party, but I do know what I stand against, and the 12 years we've had of Conservative rule have been very poor. And if this was the Labour Party in power now with these conditions, with the economy, with the health service, with the basic structures of society the way they are, they would quite rightly be condemned and out in the next general election. But somehow we think that it's okay for the Conservatives to get away with this because they're the natural party of government, and also their leaders don't look silly when they have bacon sandwiches. But that's another story entirely. So this Christmas, I want you to think about those who are less fortunate than ourselves, and I want you to think about people who are ill. I want you to visit them, and I want you to listen to their lived experiences of what their lives are. If you've been affected by illness or ill health, you know what it's like. We need to look out for each other, and we need to make our societies better, where we don't treat people the way people are being treated in this country right now. The level of pay in the NHS is shocking, and there definitely needs to be a big increase. I'm not going down all this debate about interest rates and the cost of living. I've spoken about that before. But the way the NHS has been treated over the last 12 years is just absolutely disgusting. The social care situation, the waiting for ambulances, and then ambulance being caught up in queues to try and get into hospitals. The waiting times now at A&E, it's absolutely disgraceful. The NHS is in absolute crisis, and it's been in crisis for years, deliberately. The people who came to my house and looked after me for an hour and checked up on me and helped me with my breathing, and then spoke to a GP who gave advice on my temperature and what I needed to do next, were absolutely fantastic. And what I've noticed is that in a lot of places where people work, when times are tough, often managers and leaders and politicians look to divide people and say, oh, there's some people not doing the job. It's the oldest trick in the book. We need to work together to make things better, and we need to call out what the true causes of our problems are. And in this country, we've had gross underfunding of the NHS for years. We also need to reform it, and that's exactly what some of the staff have been saying to me when I've spoken to people who work in the NHS of recent. So look out for each other, value your healthcare, and think about how we as a society move forward in terms of our healthcare, in terms of making things better in the future. Now, the NHS is important because we should need to value health, but need to look at how it can be improved and how it can be made better. Obviously, we don't want to introduce the profit motive like the US style way, but we do need to protect people better and look after people better. And we've got a government at the moment who are trying to stop strikes and playing ridiculous games, one-sided arguments to justify why wages and spending are being increased, and relying on the right-wing press to just parrot those things. Thankfully, most people have seen through all this, and most of the polls are suggesting that people are generally in support of the NHS workers and other workers who are striking over conditions of work and pay, etc., etc. The cost of living crisis at the moment is just another double whammy for people who are struggling to balance the books and to provide. The housing in Britain is quite old compared to a lot of other developed countries in Western Europe. Our housing stock is not in a good way. And again, the housing system in this country is appalling, absolutely appalling, even compared to countries like the Netherlands, etc., and Germany, with their mix of social housing, better provision of housing. We have literally got a ball and chain around our necks with the costs of housing these days, particularly for people trying to get onto the housing market. It's no good. And it ties in with all the other things that we're talking about. This inability for people to work hard and make a good life for themselves in modern Britain. And the big distraction from all this is all culture war nonsense. Because the government know at the moment that when it comes to the basics, they're not going to win any arguments, because the shoddy performance over the last few years is just absolutely disgraceful. The previous two prime ministers have been absolute clowns. Like the village idiot. You could go out on the street and pick some random person who would do a better job than the previous two prime ministers. And as for this current guy, I mean, at least he can speak properly and he seems to know what he believes, as much as I don't agree with a lot of what he says. We need to get round the table with trade unions and negotiate with them as a government. And if you can't do that, you need to just go, because that's what happens in modern democracies. People are in trade unions. People look out for each other. People don't go in to see their bosses as individuals, because you'll get sacked, moved on and gaslighted. That's why we have trade unions. That's why we have things like the weekend and sick pay and an NHS, because of the movement in this country and other countries to make things better for people as individuals and groups together, not as individuals in some kind of Ayn Rand wild Hobbesian state of nature with the war of all against all. It doesn't work. We need to work together on things, and I can't highlight that message more strongly. Government, get round the table and negotiate with people to make life better for people. Yeah, you're not going to give in to all the demands, but stop playing culture war games. You're being dictated to by newspapers owned by people who live in other countries and don't pay any tax. They're not patriotic. Get a grip on reality. While all this is going on, all you need is a few newspapers to go on about boats in the Channel, which is a culture war issue. Brexit has been a disaster, we know all that. And let's stick a few boats on the news and wind a few people up. How about you get a decent immigration policy? One that actually works. One that doesn't cost more money to send no one to Rwanda because it's red meat to right wingers. How about that? How about the decent approach to government? Like a rational approach to government. How about all that this Christmas? No. So immigration, bit of a live issue. We're going to develop better relationships with the EU moving forward. Although if I was the EU, I'd probably keep us at arm's length, particularly while you've got a gang of crazies in Parliament. And I believe that we need a better voting system, because the first past the post system, they used to say that it stops extremists coming into government because you've got to reach a basic threshold to win seats, etc. And to a degree I understand that argument. But at the same time, you've got to give people's opinions a chance to express themselves through the voting system. If people vote for more extreme parties, then those parties need to be in coalitions where they will be moderated by other parties. And the first past the post system, we've currently got an extremist government pandering to the right-wing idiots like Nigel Farage and that Tice crazy in the Reform Party and people like that. Nut jobs. So that's where we're at the moment. Anyway, that's my rant over. Look after yourselves. Let's get a good health system. Show compassion and care to those who are ill this Christmas, people who live alone. Go and visit them and look after yourself. And thank you to the NHS for looking after me recently. And yeah, let's make it better moving forward for our children and their children. Just before I finish, I just want to thank everyone for listening to this podcast. I know that I do different themes like history, politics, financial survival, creativity, well-being. I work with Hope Street. I sometimes talk myself, I sometimes have other people on. But there are a lot of people who listen to this podcast, and I do really appreciate it, particularly those who make financial contributions to keep this moving forward. And I just want to say there are people out there who might pay for certain things in their lives. And I'm going to make a little Christmas appeal. If you can afford the cost of a cup of coffee once a month, then please donate to me through coffee.com. And you might say, it's just a podcast here, it's not the end of the world. It actually makes a huge difference, because if a small percentage of my listeners did that, that would possibly go towards me being able to spend more time doing this and expanding it and getting better. And I'd like to think that I give people something that they like, based on the fact that, I've had a few thousand listens and that people seem to like it. The feedback I've got is generally good. I do like constructive feedback as well. So if you can contribute to coffee.com for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, it's like going to the pub and buying me a pint or a coffee. If you could do that once a month for a podcast, 4 podcasts a month, that makes a huge, huge difference to me. And that would be a really good gift to me to keep this thing moving forward. I've also set up a community interest company recently, which I'm looking to do more podcasting with vulnerable groups, finding out about lived experiences, and also to help people with healing and counselling, things like that. So that's something that I'm interested in as well, moving forward. I got a thing recently called 30 self-care ideas, and I'm going to read the first 5 just to finish. And it is Christmas in the next couple of days, and I want people to have a great time over Christmas, and I want you to smile and to enjoy the time with yourself and with your family and your friends. And I want you to think about those less fortunate than yourself, and to send text messages and visit people who are alone or ill. But just 5 things, to get you thinking about. And the first one is stretch all your muscles. Make sure you stretch your muscles throughout the day. So here, as you get older, you stop using muscles. Just do a little stretch now and again while you're sitting there. Your upper body, your lower body. Drink more water. We all know that we should be drinking more water, but drinking 2 litres a day, not tea or coffee or other fizzy stuff, that's dehydrating. But drink water. It's probably the best single thing you can do for your health each day, is drink more water. You are 78% water. Number 3, go for a walk in nature. Even if you just go outside to the shop, particularly early in the morning, to get yourself awake, alert. See the beauty in things. Beauty is just there over your shoulder at any particular time in your life. Number 4, indulge in your favourite treat. It might be a food, it might be something that you like to do, an event you like to go to, a hobby, absolutely anything. Maybe a bath with some salt or whatever. Do that now and again. And this one's really important, go to bed earlier. This 24-hour society, particularly young people with phones, really unhealthy what phones and media is doing to our sleep. So 5 things to think about: stretch your muscles, drink more water, go for a walk in nature, indulge in your favourite treat, go to bed early. Have a great Christmas, folks. Support this podcast any way you can. Be grateful for your health, look after yourselves, visit others, and have a wonderful, wonderful holiday. Speak to you soon. Please follow, like, subscribe on Spotify, YouTube. As you can tell, my voice isn't at its best, so I'm going to stop now. I've gone on for a bit longer than I thought, actually, but have a great Christmas, and one day you won't be here, so enjoy your health, enjoy your life, enjoy your body. See you later.